Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It is G here. I'm not sure if I've heard anyways talk about this yet, but I just finished watching the Tyler from Love is Blind interview that he did on Dear Wifey, I think it is. And let's talk about how it is religion is playing a huge part and how it plays a huge part, especially for women, particularly Black women, in staying in relationships, whether they should or shouldn't. Guys, subscribe to my channel and let's have a little chat.
I don't know who needs to hear this. I truly don't, but I hope it reaches down and touches you. I'm not required to give you a second chance. I can forgive you. That second chance gonna have to come from the Lord. Love you, bye.
Oh my gosh. I forced myself to watch the whole video because I didn't want to be biased. But I talked before in a different video about some of the toxic behavior that we saw within the pods, within the men. And Tyler was one of them, partially because he leaned into this religion thing, right? And I'm not going to say that he's not religious. He said he wasn't comfortable praying out loud before, and that his wife Ashley made him feel so safe that he was finally able to open up that aspect of himself. And I roll my eyes a little bit. And I, again, maybe he's very religious. The thing is, though, most religious men are absolutely full of shit. And they have learned how to manipulate and use the Bible in an effort to make sure women stay in a, say subservient, but in a dumbed down state. Because most of what religion is doesn't make sense, right? Like, and if you are somebody who is very critically thinking, very like wanting to understand more, you're probably not going to be that religious. You're going to see the flaws and the faults in the stories that you're being told and realize so much of it just doesn't make sense. Ashley being a very religious person, this plays into part of the reason why she cannot see or does not want to see what everyone has pointed out to her about Tyler. And I listened to his interview, and then I went and listened to some of the interview or most of the interview that the woman Bree that he had the babies with said. And what I noticed is that the guy who did the interview with him, and it's not lost on me that he went on to a podcast that is based in religion and based in these very fundamental ideas around traditional behavior between men and women. The guy who hosts the show even talked a little bit about show your masculinity, make a decision, get your wife on board, and then you move forward. You move like a man in that way, right? You take the lead and you are the leader of the house. This is what you are supposed to be doing. And, Tyler was like, "Oh, I've never had this type of counsel before. I've never, been able to trust the people around him." He just met this man 5 minutes ago, but he speaks to him in a way that using religion, using these ideologies helps support what he's doing, because he did not press him on the fact that he was living with the woman Bree for a period of time when she was pregnant with the twins. They were living in the same house. He let him tell that story about how she was going back and forth with her ex-wife, and they were still married. His name's on the birth certificate for the last two kids. And we can see the faults in what he's saying, but I'm sure that Ashley can as well. She probably knows a lot of his stuff is bullshit, but because of religion, because of how it now, even if she wanted to leave, she probably feels like she can't, because he set her up for failure from the beginning. How he decided to tell her on the show, when he decided to tell her, he did not come forthright and say to people, "Hey, I've got kids," like whether they were donated sperm or not, which, and I understand the first kid was totally different situation, donated sperm, but he chose to get involved in these children's life. It was completely a choice. Not to mention that he also encouraged Bree to continue the pregnancy when she got pregnant with the twins. they made choices together to co-parent, whether they were together or not officially, fine, but they made choices to co-parent during this period of time. And one of the ways that is always interesting with religious men, particularly when they've been in the streets and doing their thing and blah blah blah, they feel like they should get full redemption, right? That's what Jesus and God has told them that they deserve and that they are worthy of, is full redemption. Now, I do think the host was trying to hold him accountable by saying some of the things that he said. They stopped doing all this fuck shit on the other side that you're saying that they're doing, and they came to you and said, I want a co-parenting relationship. I want that and the other. What could you do? He didn't know how to move or even answer that question. And I understand it might be a hard question, but it seems like one that you would have asked, knowing that all of this stuff would eventually come out, or maybe he thought she wouldn't say anything at all. And he mentioned even that the woman that he had the children with, she has a high clearance job, that and the other. So she's risking a lot to put this out in the world. She's risking her career potentially. She's risking a lot to write, to feel like, to say, no, he's not telling the truth. He's not being completely honest. And I don't think that people blame Ashley to the extent that at the beginning she really didn't know. And now she's making the choice to stand by and believe a man, whether it makes sense completely or not. And of course, we don't know what conversations they're having in the background. We don't know their daily lives. We don't know their pillow talk, whatever. But I do think that the fact that she's so religious and that he's used religion in this way to connect with her, because there's not that many men who do these, righteous things. He's now trying to live a different path. And these men always think that, oh, I don't have to worry about when I was pimping or when I was, doing all of these. And we see it from the pulpits, especially in Black churches, regularly. They'll tell you the stories from back in the day about how they were awful and how they were these type of men, and that they have a redemption story. His redemption story somehow leaves his children from another relationship, from another situation behind. So, and I think that Ashley, to a certain extent, believes that they have the right to do that and that he has that right, despite all of the evidence that contradicts so many things that he said. I believe that it's interesting that even in his story that he was telling this man on Dear Wifey, or Dear Future Wifey, and why this man is talking to women versus men is always one of those things where you're like, come on, dude. Anyway, Dear Future Wifey are part of the conditioning. And I like to talk about conditioning. My last video I posted about women, single mothers particularly, being conditioned to think that they always need a man, and how this conditioning leads them to be pick me's, which leads them to be a danger to themselves and to children and women around them. Sometimes religious women have this same kind of idea because their love is value, their ability to be different is value, their ability to change a man is value, and to guide him down the right path. That's their value. And I think that Ashley is stepping into that role with Tyler as part of her value as a wife, as a woman, is to lead him down the path of righteousness. He was not on the righteous path before. He couldn't even pray out loud before. So he has leaned quite heavily into her patriarchal conditioning around religion, around what men's lives and roles are before they get on the righteous path. And now that he's on the righteous path, all can be forgiven. And I think that we don't talk enough about how religion puts some of us, women especially, in the hands of monsters, in the hands of men who do not necessarily have all of our best interests at heart. And I'm not saying that's necessarily for this man and Tyler, right? But he is definitely using it to try and get himself away from the choices he made when he was younger and say, well, it wasn't like that. And it's to uphold this lie that he told from the very beginning. People commit to the things that they say. And once it gets too far gone, even for Ashley, you know how, like, you know how you might, and I know as teenagers and everything, people have done this. You like somebody and they're terrible and you've defended them, right? You defended them to your friends, you defended them to your family, you defended them all across the board. But when you start to see their fuck shit, you're like, damn, I defended him. And now I'm in this situation. You end up in it longer. You end up trying to prove yourself right. And I think religion does that to a lot of women. Most of the women who turn blind eyes to so many different types of abuses are religious women. What happened in the United States around this election, women who have been socialized through patriarchy and religion to give their power over to men. And it's not lost on why he went on a show that is fundamentally religious and would have an audience that is fundamentally religious as well. It seems calculated, from both parts, because even if Ashley was like, yeah, you should do it, she's been conditioned in patriarchy and she knows how to lead him to these paths that's going to give them both the type of response and support that would be needed for their religious ideologies. And I know that people have been calling Ashley a pick me and a bird and whatever the case that may be. And I don't want to call her those things. I think that she has been conditioned in a different way. And I don't necessarily know that it's pick me, but it's definitely she's been conditioned into the good, religious woman type of role. I think that patriarchal conditioning through religion, you can be a pick me as well, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're both. And I think that for Ashley, this conditioning around religion is what she's seen and what she knows how to do and deal with a man like that, a man who was not honest or lied through omission or whatever you want to call it. It's almost expected because there are no religious men who say, I've always been a good guy. No, I've always, what? There are very few that, especially in the Black churches, will come out and be like, no, I've always been good. No, the path of abuse and patriarchy and all of that somehow leads men right into religion. That does not mean that they have left all of that other stuff behind, because religion is patriarchal in in every sense. It's just a continuation of a path. It's not a it doesn't deter you from the path of being a misogynist, of being an abuser, a womanizer. It does not take you off that path. So every time you see these men who are like, oh, in my redemption story, you didn't redeem anything. You just realized that all of this was basically the foundation for becoming a religious man, because it's all a part of patriarchy. It's nothing different. It's all intertwined together. There was a point where Tyler talked about how he was a people pleaser, and then he went into how the woman Bree was manipulative and almost sounded like coercion. And he made himself into more of that I was lost, but now I'm found, dude. He was being guided by another woman. She was the one who shaped and formed these things, that he was just trying to be a good guy and he went along with it. It's very interesting because, he talked about timelines and everything, and I heard her talk about timelines. The fact they were living together while she was pregnant kind of like completely negates everything that he said, because there's receipts that they were living at the same address during her pregnancy. So, and he did not, the host did not push him on or question him on that. Because he told a completely different story of how she was back with her wife, who apparently she domestically abused. Now, it's so confusing because he's saying the wife left because of domestic violence. She came back. They approach him after all of this, you know, stuff all over the place. After he started having a relationship with the son that they already had because she had left. After all of this, they come to him. This is his story, and asked for more sperm, for more children. They wanted to expand the family. Why would you knowingly have more children with a woman that was who's abusing her wife? Why would you have more children in a household with someone who was abuser? Either he made that choice consciously because he doesn't see anything wrong with it, or to me, again, the stepping stools of patriarchy and womanizing and misogyny is not recognizing your responsibility as just being a decent human being and saying, well, I'm not going to help you have babies in a house where you beat your wife. Make it make sense. You're already leaving that other child in a house where you know that this woman was beating her wife. Make it make sense. It just screams, again, either A, you have no personal responsibility or no thought processes, no common sense, and you think that's okay. Another interesting thing was how the host was like, the people who are responding to him are filtering him and Ashley and the relationship through their own trauma. It doesn't mean that we cannot separate ourselves and see the reflections of certain types of trauma in the beginning of it in other people. The way we learn and heal from our traumas, from our situations, from whatever we've gone through in our life is being able to recognize it again, being able to say, oh, okay, you know what? This is the pattern that I have seen in all of my traumatic situations, or these are the things that I've learned. And you're able to share those learnings with other people and hope that they do not go through them. And I think that, that was, again, this man who is helping this other man validate taking the responsibility of his choices and his lies and everything off of him. And that's part of the religious conditioning, that you have no responsibility, that you get to always be cleansed from it. Because while he's saying that no one was holding the Bree accountable for domestic violence, he wasn't even holding her accountable at the time that he agreed to have more children with her. And knowing that this situation wasn't necessarily healthy. They're breaking up, they're getting back together for whatever reason. She's cheating, is what he said. She's cheating on her wife and being violent. Why are you having more kids with her? Where does your responsibility of just saying, you know what, that's not a situation for children? And he said he was getting more involved because he didn't want the kids to be in a single parent household, but at the same time, you're not even taking care of what type of parent you're co-parenting with or having children with, or what. It just doesn't align. And I think that is part of what that blind faith of having religion and a husband starts to do to you. The host of the show kept saying, where he said to him, it's about them forsaking, she's supposed to forsake all others, right? And as well as he. And that is part of that blind faith of forsaking your own common sense and the teachings of people who have been through it, or see how relationally this is to other types of, not like abuse in relationships or neglects or whatever the case may be. And that's part of blind faith that you have to have for most religion and marriage, and to be considered that doting type of wife in religion. You have to have that blind faith. And I think that is where Ashley is in this relationship. Even if now she looks at this situation, the whole world would be like, I told you so, and that's even harder sometimes to live through than just dealing with the situation at hand. That to a certain extent, maybe they'll have to pay child support, but ultimately can potentially get to ignore. And I think now that more things have come out, the fact that his name's on the birth certificate for the last kids, to me, that says almost everything that he says is kind of full of shit. Because why would you have signed the birth certificate? And I'm sure he'll be like, I was a people pleaser, I was coercion. After all of the things that you learned within the short amount of time between the woman cheating on her wife and having the babies and all of these things that you're saying happened in this short amount of time, why would you have done the basic things to protect yourself? There are no documentations. And why would you sign a birth certificate for children that you are saying are your sperm babies? Because of how low the bar can be for men to be good guys, to be good men, to be good fathers, to be good husbands. He's at the threshold of what a good man is expected. I think that he's trying to say that he's redemptive of the choices he's made. They weren't the best choices, but he shouldn't be held by those choices. He shouldn't be held because now that he's found God and religion and a godly woman, he wants a clean slate. And I think that it's going to be hard to see their love story without this. And he's the one who tainted it. Despite what he's like, everyone's reaction, they won't let me be in love. They won't let our relationship this past year has been so shaky because of everyone's opinions and how it has played a part. You did that to yourself because at the very beginning, he knew putting that information out that he was a father of three was not going to get him very far with most women with no baggage. He knew that from the start. He knew how unappealing that would be for most women going into relationships, especially now at these age. It would be different with just one, but three is a lot, right? And I think that he talked about Black people tearing down Black love. I don't think that is the case at all. I think that more, especially Black women, want to see other Black women be loved correctly and completely and without having to sacrifice so much of what they say they wanted, what their boundaries were, what they expected in love and life for mediocrity, for a man who isn't going to even own up to the choices he's made. I think that's what they want to see more in love for Black women, whether it's Black love or whatever type of love. They want to see those women loved completely without having to give up so much of themselves all the time. And I think that so many people get caught up on this idea of, two Black people, and it's great. It's lovely. But at the same time, people want to see that that complete joy for Black women. The other season of Love is Blind with Brett and Tiffany, everyone was so happy because that was so complete. And she didn't have to sacrifice her life and she didn't have to sacrifice and do all of these things. So to act as though people are just trying to tear them down because they don't want to see two Black people happy, no. We want to see that woman thrive without sacrifice of her soul, of herself. And I'm tired of people assuming that we can't hold one another as women, as Black women, as human beings accountable simply because you got something, right? You just got something and that's great. And if that's all you wanted was something, then okay. But people do want to see you win big and they want to see you win completely. And when someone comes with shit in the game, and it looks like it's shit in the game from the very beginning that doesn't make sense, and you're just kind of going along with it, we know it's not necessarily going to go in your favor long term. And I think that is what people want for her. They want long term bliss and happiness and the love that she deserves. And not to see her end up in the same situation with this man as other women have, because we know it's shit in the game. His story doesn't make sense. And we need to say that out loud. And these redemption stories for men, especially on this godly path, is it's so obnoxious, and it's so done before, and it's so boring. It's just that so many times we see these things, and especially with men, once they found God, they get to detach. They get to detach from everything and anything that they want to. And they get to pretend that they're somebody completely different, even though they have followed the proper stepping stones right into the pulpit. Guys, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to talking to you in the comments. So, ciao, ciao for now.